Amy Farley, a senior at Conrad Schools of Science. Schedule differences. The average school day in China runs from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. at night, which is much longer than its American counterpart. It's very common in China for students to learn in classroom groups for the entire time they're in a certain school. Students learn all their subjects together as opposed to being in a different class for each subject. This often continues into their college years. Similarly, it's also commonplace for teachers to move from one grade to the next along with their students. This tends to create a strong relationship between students and their teacher. In addition to having longer school days, Chinese students also help with chores before or after class. Chinese classes are also much larger in size than those of the United States, with anywhere from 30 to 50 students per teacher. Individualism versus collectivism. So a major variation in the educational cultures of China and America is the emphasis on an individualistic or collectivism-based learning process. So Chinese classrooms tend to focus on how the class as a whole is learning, whereas American teachers tend to spend more time focused on how each student learns as an individual. Put simply, China can be referenced as a we culture and the United States as a me culture. It's not common for a Chinese student to be rewarded individually for a job well done. Rather, educational success is celebrated on a full classroom scale. These varying emphases are heavily based upon the two different cultures valuing these compatible ideas both within and outside of the classroom. While in China, we conducted an interview with our Chinese instructor, who has experience working with students from both cultures. Her response to the question, "What are some differences you have seen between American and Chinese students?" illustrates several of the other differences and similarities present within Chinese and American schools.
Usually Chinese students, they prefer textbooks, so I don't need to design my lesson plans to think of what I need to teach for the next lesson. I just need a textbook and follow the units and then design according to a textbook. For the American students, they prefer those more the individual-based and group-based work. They prefer to talk, and they emphasize a lot on the oral practice and interpersonal activities.
你好, my name is Grace Tapia. I'm a high school senior in Conrad School of Science. Creativity and stress. What does education really mean to Chinese students, and what does education really mean to students in America? There is no doubt that China has a very strict educational system and a high-stake examination system compared to education in other Western countries. But what lies in the mindset of these students? In the 2017 study titled The Comparison of Stress Between Chinese High School Students and American High School Students, the authors Wei Hui and Wen Qingqiang mentioned that according to the Institute of International Education, up to 304,000 Chinese students were studying abroad in the U.S. The number has been increasing even to this day. American education is viewed in China as a system where students have time for personality development and more time for activities other than academics. Let's take a look at the statistics. We have two surveys. One survey done by the previous author I mentioned, Wei Hui and Wen Qingqiang, and one survey we created in which Chinese students, Delaware students, and Chicago students participated in. In the study done by Wei Hui, the results concluded that Chinese students study more and participate less in after-school sports. However, there was no stress level difference between American and Chinese high school students. Let's take a look at the survey we conducted. Although both students, Chinese and American, go through similar stress pressure, Chinese students realistically study more. However, we must look at the different factors that this stress comes from. American students' stress pressure comes from themselves and the expectations of themselves. However, due to many different cultural factors, Chinese students tend to receive the stress from the parents' strong requirement and expectation for the children to come home with an excellent grade. University doesn't enforce anything other than the testing grade from the mission, which explains why Chinese students' lack of interest in participating in sports. Meanwhile, in America, university admissions expect a lot of volunteering and contribution to the community other than grades.
Hi, my name is Danielle Weil, and I'm going into my senior year at Alexis I. DuPont High School.
National standardized testing is one of the many determining factors for the way a school system paces its curriculum. Students take cues from the culture that raised them when deciding how much they should study and how much effort they should put in order to have a bright future ahead of them. In America, the SAT is a standardized test taken at the end of a student's junior year of high school. It measures a student's aptitude in 3 sections: math, evidence-based reading and writing, and the essay. The test is 3 hours and 50 minutes long, or only 3 hours if taken without the optional essay. Though beneficial, a high SAT score is not vital to a student's success in getting into college. The SAT can be retaken, as several dates are offered every few months. While many students may take a practice test or two at a parent or teacher suggestion, it isn't a common practice for students to spend hours each day studying for the SAT. China's version of the SAT is called the Gaokao, which is taken at the end of a student's senior year of high school. The test covers Chinese literature, mathematics, foreign language, and continues with either social sciences or natural sciences depending on the student. The whole test is 9 hours long and is spread across 2 days. A Chinese student's academic future depends heavily on their score. A bad score in the Gaokao can exempt a student from admission to all institutes of higher learning. The Gaokao is only offered once a year, so preparation for the test is intense and life-consuming. Although the Gaokao has no entrance fee, most families are willing to put thousands of dollars into tutors, special diets, and anything else that gives their child a competitive edge. The government even gives test takers special considerations during the exam, allowing them priority access to public transportation and taking precautions to minimize any distractions. Even though the Chinese Gaokao is much more intense than the American SATs, at their cores, both are important tests that can determine how much value a student has to colleges and future jobs. When compared, they speak volumes about how the cultural interpretation of teaching to the test impacts the whole structure of school curriculums.